Next thing up, we're working with some buyers. We're at a home and gonna do the home inspection, an important part of the buying process.
So we'll kind of hit some of the highlights where the inspectors look at the things that they think are very critical, and really just kind of dive in deep into a lot of different parts of the inspection in various rooms, the kitchen, the garage, the exterior, and just focus on what will show up on the report and what that means.
So follow along. So a home inspection isn't just the interior then, right?
No, sir. No, sir. It includes the exterior, all the components, and then the interior.
So what are some of the things that you're looking for on the exterior of a house that might pop on a report?
So most inspectors will start their inspection on the exterior because that'll help guide what they need to look for on the interior.
Okay.
So for us, we're going to look at the foundation, see if we see any cracks or any indication from just a corner blowout, making sure that the foundation itself looks good. We're also going to mark when there's high soil, like right in that corner right there, because we can't visualize that, and we need to be able to see about 4 inches, some people say 6 inches of slab, so we can actually see if there's a problem. And in this area, we're going to look at the walls, look for any cracks. You can see right here on this house, that area, that's the lintel right there, that steel plate. And you can see it's not painted. And when it's not painted like that, it'll start to rust, and water will actually get in there and expand and contract. And it'll start to cause cracks at the top of the windows, like you can see right there.
Okay.
Then we're going to look for caulking, make sure that all the windows are properly sealed up.
Now I know these lintels, it seems like I see so many homes where they're never painted. That seems to be a very common thing.
It is pretty common, but it is something that needs to be taken care of.
So you can go back out, have it sanded down, and then painted later.
Yeah. As long as you keep it sealed up, again, you're just trying to keep moisture from getting into that material and causing any movement. Because that's where you start to get cracks down and around the walls.
Okay. Now I happen to notice this is rather interesting here.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see this probably pretty often, don't you?
Yes, we do.
People forget about downspouts, don't they?
Right. And the problem with that is you're trying to keep water from terminating so close to the foundation, because when it does, you'll either get a soil erosion, which will cause can cause the foundation to actually have some settlement because there's no soil under there supporting it, or you get water sitting up there, and again, a lot of moisture, you're going to get expansion and contraction going on. You really want to keep that from happening. So downspouts are more important than most people think. On almost every house, we call out downspouts for terminating too close to the foundation.
Yeah, like this one they tried, obviously, but it became disconnected. You have to monitor these things, don't you?
Yes, it's important.
Maintenance in a home.
Yeah.
So I know, what do you look for? What are we looking for on the outside of a window?
Yeah, so the same as on the inside. You're really just looking to see, is it properly installed? Is there any cracking around it? You look at the panes, are the screens there? Are they damaged? Like this one has some damage to it. You want to make sure that, is there caulking that needs to occur around it? I mean, it's pretty much the same inspection you do on the inside on the exterior. Right here is that central vac cover that I was talking about. So that's open, and so rodents can just go right in that opening inside into the garage. So that needs to be covered up.
And then what do you, now you're not a roofer per se, but
Correct.
Roofs are part of what you inspect as well.
Sir. Yes,
what
sir.
are you looking for, as we look at roofs?
Yeah, so we're primarily looking that, one, the shingles are properly installed. 2, that the flashing is supporting, that the side walls have proper flashing on it. Areas around the chimney are particularly a problem, that they're not flashed properly around there. The material itself, we're looking to see, is there any fiberglass exposure which results from granular loss? So the shingles have granules on it. With it, when it wears, those granules move off and you can start to see the fiberglass beneath that. So that's just an indication that it's an older roof. And then we look for impact damage. Is there some kind of a mechanical impact? It can be hail impact. But those are shown up by little dark spots or indentations on the shingles themselves.
You probably see quite, especially here in East Texas, we've had quite a bit of hail, so you probably see that pretty often.
It's fairly common, yeah.
And
but,
usually a good way to get insurance to hopefully step in.
But just because you have hail damage doesn't mean you have to have your roof replaced. Roofers will come in, if we identify shingle impact damage, we'll call the agent and say, you've got impact damage, you need to have a roofer look at it. And then they can determine how far apart the strikes are and determine whether the roof should be replaced or not.
So really, even when you look at an inspection, this is, okay, well, here's a real potential area. Call in a qualified person on just this one area, a roofer, an electrician, a plumber at that point, so that if there's a major thing, then now we can dig deeper into it.
So a home inspector should be seen as a generalist. We're looking at a big picture. We're required to know a little bit about everything, but we don't know the details of a roof. And we can't tell you, is that roof need to be replaced? For the most part,
Right.
So we always want a specialist to come in. So our job is to tell you, we've identified a potential problem, and we would want you as the buyer to go get somebody else to look at it and make sure that it's either okay or needs to be further, addressed.
All right, we're continuing on with our home inspection. So we're just in a standard room here, right? So this would be like anywhere in the house. What are you looking for in just any type of room?
Sure.
Really?
Sure. So, you start, and every inspector has their own way of doing it. But for me, I start at the ceiling and I run my flashlight around. I'm looking really for any cracks in the ceiling, any aberration in the paint, if there's any patching. And then I just move from wall to wall and look for cracks in the wall, then all the way down to the floor. We test all the outlets. In a vacant space, we test all of them. Now, if the house is occupied, we can't get to all of them. We just have to do one.
People put furniture in front of outlets?
Believe it or not. Test all the fixtures. This one, the fixture's obviously working. A lot of times we see burnt out light bulbs, and of course our regulations say we have to call it out even though it's just a burnt out light bulb. We don't.
Well, because you wouldn't know if it's actually an electrical problem or a bulb.
Exactly.
Because your job isn't to go in and figure out exactly what the problem is, right?
Correct. We just tell you that there's a problem, and figuring out the cause or how to fix that problem is, beyond our scope.
Yep.
And then, of course, we test the windows. We're required to test at least one window in every room. Bedrooms should have at least one operable window. And then we look along the seams to make sure that it's properly installed. We're looking for, any cracks along this baseboard that would be an indication that you need more caulking or possible resealing of it. Again, just making sure that the windows are operable and properly installed. And then, of course, we moved down to this baseboard, and when we were inspecting this area, we realized that some of this baseboard down here, you can see right here in particular, it's wavy, and it's got some damage to it. This little quarter round has actually popped off, and if you look at this corner here, you've actually come in and sealed that up with some caulking. But the extent runs all the way across this wall over to right about here, where the wall is bubbled. And then if you flip over these drapes, you can see the staining here on the drapes. Now, what caused this water penetration, I'm not sure, but we know that there has been water penetration. So then the next step is to take a moisture meter. There's two kinds, some penetrate and some don't. And you just put it into the surface like such and put it on, and it'll tell you if there's actual any moisture. So if you look at this one's staying green, so that's telling me that there's no active moisture in this particular area. if there's active moisture, then it'll move over into the red zone. And some inspectors actually use infrared to look at the walls with an infrared camera to see where, how far the
Right.
moisture is.
But in this case, it could be a leak that happened years ago and they've just not repaired it correctly.
Absolutely. It could be a leak. It could be just water got, spilled and didn't get caught in time, and so it sat up there. The damage to the wall tells me that the wall stayed wet for a period of time. If it had been cleaned up immediately, you wouldn't have that kind of damage. So it sat there and then it moved up the wall a bit.
All right. Well, that's what we get in a general room inspection as part of our home inspection. And onward we go. Another part of the house, and they never seem to end, do they?
No, this is a big house.
So we're here in the master bathroom, and I'm assuming all the bathrooms are going to be similar to what you're looking for.
Right.
So what stands out, or what do you look for in a bathroom and test?
Right. So we start with the plumbing. We're running all the fixtures. We actually turn on all the fixtures at the same time. And the reason that we do that is because we're testing to see if there's a functional flow problem. So if you have all the fixtures running at the same time and the pressure drops, then you have a functional flow problem. You may have to turn the off.
That's weird. Oh, okay. Wow.
I told you that one was messed
Yes, you did.
So at any rate, then we're going to be looking at the plumbing, and in the plumbing we're looking for any stains or anything that we would see on the cabinetry, and then we're required to report on the type of drain and the type of water supply line. So in this particular case, you've got a PVC drain and you've got copper supply lines. So we keep those running and make sure that there's no leaks in there. We operate the shower, make sure there's no leaks around the shower head. This particular bathroom has what we call a hydromassage or spa. So we are required to test those. We plug it up, get the water above the vents, and then turn the unit on. And most of the time, they get called out for two things. One, you'll see here there's no access to the motor, and that's a problem because if the unit fails, there's no way to repair that without pulling the siding off of it. And then two, they're always, so we've just run this when you can see all the debris that's left in there. So these units just are very difficult to keep clean inside the jets themselves. So that's usually the two problems, or they're not working at all. When we're looking inside at the equipment, we're looking for, is it grounded? Does it have a GFCI plug that it's actually plugged into because of the exposure to water? The windows around bathtubs have to be safety rated because of the slip fall. So if they're not safety rated, we have to call that out because if somebody were to fall and go into it, so a non-safety rated glass would have shards, and the safety rated would actually crumble and cause less injuries. In this particular bathroom, because there's wallpaper on the walls, we'll make a note that there's wallpaper because wallpaper can sometimes hide defects that an inspector can. I mean, we're looking for visual indications, and if they're covered up, we just can't see them. So we would mark that. If you look over at this outlet right here, you can see there's a little bit of scorching or some type of damage to that one. So we'll mark that it needs to be further evaluated. And then we test all of the plugs, just as Nick talked about earlier, to make sure that they are powered. And this little light here tells me that this one is powered and that it's wired properly.
Gotta love technology can actually tell you so much more that's happening behind the wall that you can't see.
Exactly. So if it's not wired properly, it'll tell me, is it just an open ground or is it a reverse polarity? What kind of problem it is. So that kind of helps the homeowner know what the level of concern is. And then we'll just say, you know, an electrician needs to look at that. We check for the GFCIs, check the toilets, and then we're looking for exhaust fans in the bathrooms, because you have to have, with the amount of moisture and the fumes, you have to have good ventilation in the bathroom. And that's usually a problem in older homes. In this particular house, they do have the ventilation, but it's terminating into the attic, and it's, by current standards, it's supposed to terminate to the exterior.
Seems like on older homes, that's like,
It's very common.
I mean, it's like then the builders were like, okay, we got it to the attic, good enough.
Exactly. And it's very, very common in a little bit older home to see that the exhaust fans are terminated into the attic instead of the exterior.
So I'm with Nick here with G&W Home Inspection. So just kind of tell me, we come into the kitchen, what are some of the bigger areas of concern or things that we want to make sure are working correctly?
Yeah, so we're going to test all the appliances except for the refrigerator. Obviously there's not a refrigerator in here, but so we're going to test the oven. We're going to set the temperature to 350 degrees.
Okay.
And we want that to be a differential within 25 degrees.
How often are they accurate?
For the most part, they're pretty accurate. If you get one that's a little bit older, or sometimes even the new ones, like some of the dust and stuff hasn't settled yet. So
Yeah.
you're actually supposed to let them sit at 350 for 20 minutes. And then we'll take this gun and run it through there. And then we're also checking to make sure there's not any vibrations or loud sounds in there as well.
Okay.
Then over here on the dishwasher, we're going to set that to normal and let that run a cycle. We're checking to make sure the brackets are all installed correctly and that there's no plumbing leaks there.
Awesome.
Then at the kitchen sink, so underneath here, there's a nice little handyman work. So that's going to be called out as deficient on our report, but we're also going to check the disposal to make sure it's working properly. And then the hot water. So on the hot water, we want it to be at 120 degrees.
Okay.
Sometimes we find that, you know, people like hot showers, so they'll turn them up a little bit, but really the requirement is 120 degrees. And then also at the electrical outlets there, we want to make sure that that's GFCI protected.
It's something that always comes up on all of them, especially older houses that don't, you know,
Yes,
aren't
sir.
updated.
So
So
you-
what does that do? I honestly, you know,
And so if you were to have like let's just say a hair dryer in the sink, and so if you were to have contact with the water in that hair dryer, it should shut the power off to that.
okay. Okay.
So we do want to make sure, even though it is installed, that it actually flips, because we do find some that they have it there, but they're not working properly.
Okay. So is there a rule that there has to be like one on a wall, or like what's the frequency that they're supposed to be?
Within 6 feet of water.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. And sometimes you'll find that they'll be placed periodically through the kitchen, but we want to make sure that anywhere within 6 feet of water.
Okay. Well, that's helpful.
And then on the stove, we want to make sure and turn all these burners on and make sure that they're working correctly, and then that this vent hood is vented correctly. Sometimes we find that they're just taped up here, or we find that the fan is not working correctly and it's just making a rumbling sound.
Okay. What's probably the most common deficiency that you find in a kitchen, or most frequent, I guess?
Usually the hot water, you know, people like I said, like to have the hot showers, or sometimes it's not reaching the temperature correctly.
Yeah.
Which you can usually adjust on the thermostat at the water heater itself.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. That's
Yes,
helpful.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're at the thermostat, checking the HVAC system. What's that look like?
Yeah, so today, since it's kind of cooler today, we're going to test the heater. So first thing we want to do is make sure that it's actually set to heat,
Okay.
and that the fan is on auto and not just on.
Yeah.
Which some homes we go to, it's just continuously running, and that's going to wear out that fan pretty quickly.
Okay.
And not do the unit any good service. So we're going to set it, and then we're going to turn it up just a little bit, a couple degrees, and then we're going to go over to the return
Okay.
and check the temperature there.
Okay.
And so once we get to that return, it's going to tell me obviously the temperature, and then I'm going to go to the other vents and check and make sure. So the temperature differential should be
From what it's set to and what's actually coming out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Between 16 and 24 degrees.
Okay.
So typically what we find is, that they are working, but that it's blowing too hot on the heater, and then on the cooling, the opposite.
Yeah.
So it's not cooling enough.
Okay.
Just in a couple things you can look for at the units themselves is at the drip pan. Sometimes they'll be full of water, or they'll be rusting in that pan, so that's the sign that something's not working properly.
Okay.
And some of them have alarms in there where you can tell if there is a problem, then it's going to be going off to where you can notify the homeowner.
Okay. Awesome.
So we're going to shoot at the return. And so we got 64. And then we're going to come to all areas of the house. So sometimes it'll be fine in one area. Obviously, most people want to make sure the master's getting good and warm or good and cold. So we're going to check here. So right now it's at 74. I'm going to give it a few seconds to run. And so it should get to 16 to 24 degrees differential from what it's set to.
Okay. Okay. At minimum, it needs to be 16 degrees.
Yes, sir.
Hotter.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So now
it's there.
getting up to 82, 83.
Okay.
And we want to check every room.
Yeah.
But one other note, and so depending on what the outside temperature is, so some people say, well, why didn't you test the coolant? If the temperature is below 55, we don't test the cooling because you could damage the outside unit, the condenser.
Okay. That's nice to know. So we move to the garage. Usually the attic's out here. We can kind of go up there. What do you look for when you're in the attic?
Well, so the first thing is that we look at that ladder, and you can tell this one is actually too long for the space that it's provided.
Yeah.
And it's causing it to bend right there. And so it would be unsafe for a heavy person to climb this
Gotcha.
ladder. Then we look to see if it's fire rated, and it should have an insulation covering on that. We look
Okay.
at the installation, making sure that it's installed with the right type of fasteners.
Yeah.
Up in this attic, the furnace and the hot water heater are both housed
Okay.
up there. So we're looking to see if there's repair that needs to be done. They need to be able to traverse to those units. So you
Okay.
have to have a technician platform installed.
Gotcha.
If you don't, or if it's just partially installed, then we have to mark it, as being a problem, because you don't
Yeah.
want people being up there trying to stand
Right,
on
yeah,
the
of
joist
course.
to get through it. So up here you got the water heater. In this particular unit, it is a electric unit, so we're looking at the shutoffs for the electricity and the water. Because it's in the attic, the water supplies have to be insulated.
Okay.
We mark, what the manufactured year, how many gallons it is. We're looking to make sure that it's actually responding, and that is the temperature that Nick talked about in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
making sure that it's temping out properly. And then we look at the drainage to make sure that it does have a secondary drain.
Yeah.
And then the TPR drain.
Okay.
The type of unit, the type of TPR drain we have to know.
Yeah.
So we're just making sure that, one, the unit works, 2, it's properly installed, and 3, it's not going to damage anything should you have a problem with
Okay.
it. Same thing with the furnace that's up there. We're looking at the manufacturers, the installation, and then the temping of the unit on the inside. This particular unit is a gas unit, so we look at the gas line that goes into the furnace to make sure. This one has what we call a flex line on
Yeah.
it. And the problem with flex lines is that those units vibrate when they operate, and
Okay.
those flex lines can get damaged. So
Because they're moving around on the
right,
okay,
right,
the connection.
and you don't want to have kind of a split in that flexible line. So we will report that this one needs to have a rigid line installed. Again, it has a little bit of rusting in the drip pan, so something that just needs to be monitored.
Yeah.
It's probably an old drain that got clogged up. This is the problem with putting these units up in the attic, is that the homeowner actually has to go up there and make sure that those drains are cleaned out by putting bleach in them on a regular basis. So it's not as convenient, but it's what we're seeing in most builds now.
Okay.
So that's pretty much up the components up there. From the framing and structural, we're looking at how the framing is, making sure that the rafters and the sheathing and the ridge board are all installed properly. Sometimes if they have spray foam, we can't see those components because the spray foam actually covers up a lot of that. But in this house, they have fiberglass blown-in insulation, so we could see all that. We're looking to make sure that the sheathing has the H-clips installed between the panels so that it doesn't move around. Then we look at the attic ventilation, making sure there's enough ventilation in the attic space so that it doesn't put more stress on the roof or on the structure itself. In this house, they have recessed lights, and insulation shouldn't be in contact with the recessed lights. So it either has to have a barrier around the units up there, or you can replace the fixtures with LED lights because they don't get hot.
Okay.
Then we're looking, we talked about the insulation, the framing up here. We look at the electrical wiring. In this particular attic, the attic light is not working, but everything else in terms of the electrical looks fine.
Good.
And that's pretty much it on the attic space.
Okay.
We're also going to operate these overhead doors to make sure that, so we'll click it and then we'll put our foot out in front of it to make sure it automatically reverses.
Yeah.
And then we look and see how high these sensors are. They should be within 6 inches of the ground.
Okay.
If the panel's in the garage, we'll open the panel up. We've already done that today. We're looking to see when these go up and down, if there's any hang-ups or if there's any tension on the springs themselves.
Okay.
Or if there's any rusting. A lot of times we'll see that when the garage doors come down, they don't have a piece at the bottom. You see that black piece, that's a bottom sweep. If they don't have those, rodents and snakes and stuff are, anything
It's just
can
not
come
sealed
in.
as well.
So we
Okay.
always want those to be sealed up properly. And then we operate the sprinkler system.
Okay.
This particular sprinkler system we did operate, we didn't find any problems,
Good.
but it does fail because they're supposed to be labeled, just like your electrical panel, it's supposed to
where
be
the
labeled.
stations are.
Right.
Gotcha.
And so it doesn't have that, and then there's not a rain sensor on this house.
Okay.
So that's a good example of everything is operating fine,
Yeah.
but technically,
There's still,
it's still going to get marked deficient in our report.
Okay.
We're looking at the windows, operating those, making sure that they're sealing properly. This house has a central vac. We don't actually inspect the central vacs, but we do look around, just to make sure that there's this house on the exterior vent cover, it's missing.
Okay.
When those are open like that, rodents can get into the system, so
Gotcha.
we'll alert them to that, but we don't usually run these. And then testing, all these outlets out here also have to be GFCI protected.
Okay. One on each wall.
Yes, or they can be protected at the breaker as long as they're labeled, but they should be on the same circuit.
Okay.
In this garage, you look right here, this is actually the dryer vent. And because of the fumes and, when a dryer vent is operating, it's putting out a lot of hot air.
Yeah.
And so these are not supposed to terminate into the garage.
Okay.
They used to allow that, but they don't allow that anymore.
Gotcha. Just probably when the home was built, that was acceptable.
Yeah, so this really needs to be terminated out to the wall or up through the roof.
Okay.
In this particular case, probably up through the roof is
Easiest.
a lot. And then we check the vent itself to make sure that it's clean, doesn't have a lot of debris, because fire issues can occur with that. And then the doors have to be, the garage doors have to be a solid door. And they can't have glass in them or hollow doors, because if fires are going to happen, they're going to happen in the garage. And so this would be a delay in having the fire move from this here into the house. So this has to be a fire barrier door. Sometimes we'll see paneling installed on the walls. That is a problem for the fire barrier as well. So
Okay.
paneling should not be installed on garage walls. I mean, if it's there, it's there.
Yeah.
We would recommend that you take it down because it would accelerate the flames
Gotcha.
instead of act as a retardant.
Okay.
It's to have a self-closing device on this door such that if the door is left open, the door will automatically close. Again, that's for the fire
Yeah.
safety.
Okay.
Uh,
Some sort of weight to it, I guess, to
Yeah, it's
spring
a,
it. Okay.
so that the door closes automatically. And that's pretty much what we
Awesome.
would look for in a garage inspection.
Okay.
One of the parts, that I think most homeowners probably get a little freaked out about is the electrical in a house, right? So what is it that you guys will do when you come up to an electrical?
So we look for those branding recognitions for anything that has a recall on the panel itself,
Okay.
and then we'll open it up and then we'll start checking on the inside of that.
Well, let's open this puppy up. All right. So what are we looking at other than a bunch of wires?
So on the main line, this is your service line coming in. So this is where this is kind of the utilities come in and service your panel. On this side, we have your neutral bar, and then you have your ground bar on this side, and then there's the general slew of the breakers. So and here we'll just kind of go based off what the new electrical standards are. So we'll check for things like the AFCI breakers, and we'll make sure that the breakers are there's no indications of failure or anything like that.
And what are a lot of the problems you see typically in a box like this?
I mean, I would say probably the majority of it is just that every year that they put out a new standard, a new code, is that the panels just are outdated. The breakers are designed in a way to last for several years, so it's the most common is really it's going to be outdated. It's just
But there's no way unless you replace your panel every year
right.
to
I mean,
keep up with code.
it seems like every other year there's a new requirement coming out, even within like subsections of the code. So like the AFCI, as I mentioned earlier, it used to be that used to be just bedrooms, and now they're extending that to kitchens, offices, pretty much anywhere it's habitable spaces are virtually become AFCI protected now.
But most older homes don't have that, do
Most
they?
older homes don't have that. I think they started implementing that in 2008, so it's been around for a little while, but I mean, you still have, especially in Tyler and East Texas, you still have a lot of these homes that are built in 1900, 1920, 1930.
Well, even this one that's built pre-2000 isn't going to have that.
Right.
But it's not something that the homeowner should necessarily be looking to have fixed right away.
Yeah, I mean, so when we do inspections of the houses, we don't really have the luxury of saying that hey, it passes because it was okay when it was installed. So we always go based off what the new requirements are. Usually, those are the safest options,
Sure.
And that's the reason why they put them out there. And so we always want to, go by the most safest and current forms of doing things.
Gotcha. All right.
Easy enough.
Yep. Well, it's been a successful day, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
And, as we wrap this home inspection up.
Yeah, we got to look at everything and have a better sense of the overall condition of the home and know the things that we want to, ask to get repaired or get further evaluated, which is, kind of the next step after the inspection.
Really important, and you should have a good agent that sits down and talks to you about what's in the report, and good inspectors that'll answer questions for you.
That's right. And to me, this is really the first big hurdle that has to be crossed. We got to know what the condition of the house is. We can't know that just walking through, and that, I think hopefully we've got a better sense of that.
Well, if you have questions on the home buying process, we're here and happy to help.